Hey everyone, welcome back. Ready for another deep dive? Today we're going to be tackling something a little different. We're taking on reflexology.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
That's a good one.
the whole like poking your feet and somehow it's connected to your liver thing. We've got a Wikipedia article all about it. So whether you're thinking maybe you want to book a session yourself, or you're just kind of curious about like all the hype, we're going to be breaking down like all the facts, the claims, the history, the whole nine yards.
Yeah, it's one of those things that I think a lot of people have heard about. They may have even seen like a little foot chart at some point.
Yeah.
But the science behind it is always a little bit murky.
It really is. It's like you look at these zones that they've got all mapped out on the feet, and they're like, oh, this one little spot that's connected to your gallbladder. It's kind of wild. I mean, between you and me, does any of that actually sound plausible?
Well, that's what we're here to find out, right? I mean, there was a major review of scientific studies done by the Cochrane collaboration back in 2009, and they found no evidence that reflexology effectively treats any medical condition.
The Cochrane collaboration, for those who might not be familiar, they're kind of like, if you need to know, like, what's what in healthcare, they're the ones to go to.
Yeah, they're like the gold standard.
They just lay it all out there, no sugarcoating.
Yeah, no bias.
So that's something to think about if you're considering reflexology, like, as a health thing.
Yeah, and I mean, it's serious enough that, like,
Yeah.
the Australian government doesn't cover reflexology with their health insurance
Oh, wow.
because of the lack of evidence.
So if you're in Australia and you want to get a reflexology treatment, you're probably paying out of pocket.
Most likely, yeah.
Interesting. Okay, so we've got all these zones, but science is like, eh. Now, the Wikipedia article does talk about like some ways that reflexology is claimed to work. And this is where it gets kind of
A
mystical.
little bit out there.
They talk about manipulating qi, this energy flow, which comes up a lot in like alternative medicine.
Oh, yeah, it's huge.
Have you ever heard of qi before?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. It's kind of that vital energy supposed to flow through the body. But there's no scientific evidence to actually, like, prove that it exists.
So we're kind of going into the realm of belief here, rather than like hard science.
Right, and it's important to keep that in mind,
Yeah.
especially with health.
Totally, totally. All right, so we've tackled the science, or the lack thereof. What about the history of this practice? Like, where did it all begin? The Wikipedia article mentions that practices that are similar to reflexology go way back, like ancient India, China, Egypt. It's been around for a while.
It has, and I think it's interesting because
Yeah.
the concept of using, like, pressure points to heal has been around for centuries in different forms. But like reflexology as we know it today really started taking shape in the U.S. in the early 1900s, thanks to folks like William Fitzgerald. He was an ear, nose, and throat doctor,
Mm-hmm.
and Edwin Bowers. And they kind of start talking about this zone therapy, so stimulating different zones of the body to promote healing.
So that's where that whole zone concept ties in. It's like the thread connecting everything.
It really is, yeah.
Now, the article also mentions a group in the UK called the Complementary and Natural Healthcare Council, the CNHC. What is that all about?
So the CNHE, they offer this voluntary registration for reflexologists in the UK.
Okay.
It's not like legally required or anything, but it's supposed to kind of set some standards for the practice. But, and this is really important, it doesn't mean the CNHC is vouching for how effective it is.
So it's more about like making sure people are following certain guidelines, not necessarily proving that it works.
Exactly.
And speaking of like claims and guidelines, the article mentions this pretty interesting anecdote about this skeptic who found CNHC registered reflexologists making claims about treating illnesses that they later had to take back because they weren't backed up.
Oh, wow.
So it really makes you think.
It does. It really does. Like,
Like, even with this kind of regulation, there's still a chance of misleading info out there.
yeah, you always got to be a little skeptical.
Totally. Okay, so we've covered a lot about reflexology so far. We've talked about the claims, the evidence, or lack thereof, the history. Before we go any further, though, let's take a quick pause. We'll be right back.
That's good.
Okay, so we're back. And before the break, we were talking about how even though there's not a lot of scientific evidence for reflexology, it's still really popular in some parts of the world. The article actually mentioned that in Denmark, over 20% of people have tried it. What do you think about that?
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I think it shows that what's considered alternative or like fringe in one place might be totally mainstream in another.
Yeah, it's like totally normal there.
Exactly. Different cultures have different ideas about health and wellness.
That's a good point. It's a good reminder for all of us to be open-minded.
Hmm.
So, okay, we've talked a lot about the scientific evidence, or lack of it. But what about people who say they've had good experiences with reflexology? How do we square that?
That's a great question. And it's something we have to acknowledge because there are lots of people who say they feel better after a reflexology session.
Right.
The thing is, though, personal experiences can be influenced by a lot of things, like the placebo effect.
The placebo effect.
Yeah, have you heard of that?
I have, but
It's basically when you experience a benefit from something, that doesn't actually have an active ingredient.
oh,
Like you take a sugar pill thinking it's medicine, and you start feeling better because you think it's going to help.
that's crazy.
I know.
So with reflexology, is it possible that some of the benefits come from that placebo effect?
It could be. I mean, when you go for a treatment, you're in a relaxing environment, someone's giving you this focused attention,
Mm-hmm.
and you're probably hoping it's going to work. All of that can make you feel better, even if there's nothing actually happening in your body.
So it's not like people are making it up.
Yeah.
But we got to be aware of all the different factors involved.
Yeah, exactly.
It's important to be informed.
And that's why it's always a good idea to talk to your doctor or a healthcare professional if you're thinking about trying reflexology or any other alternative therapy.
They can give you advice based on the evidence,
And they can help you weigh the risks and benefits.
so you can make the best decision for yourself.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've gone over a lot today. Claims, evidence, history, cultural influences. What would you say are the key takeaways for our listeners?
Key takeaways. Well, I think the most important one is that we don't have a lot of scientific proof that reflexology works. So if you're thinking about using it for a health problem, definitely talk to your doctor first.
That makes sense.
And remember, your health journey is your own. It's about finding what works best for you, but doing it in a smart way,
I like that.
being informed and critical.
You know, when we were talking about the placebo effect earlier, it got me thinking, could those benefits that people feel from reflexology, even if science can't fully explain them, maybe they come from the power of relaxation and positive thinking? It makes you wonder about the mind-body connection.
Yeah, that's super interesting. We've been focusing on the evidence, or lack of it. But the human body is so complex. There's still so much we don't know.
It's pretty humbling to think that even with all our scientific advances, there are still mysteries out there.
Absolutely.
And maybe the best tool we have is critical thinking.
yeah, asking questions, being curious, evaluating information carefully.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Well, everyone, that brings us to the end of our deep dive into reflexology. I hope you learned some interesting things today.
I hope you feel a little more empowered
Mm.
to make your own decisions about this practice.
And until next time, keep those minds engaged. Keep asking those questions.
And keep those feet happy.
That's a wrap. You know, it's wild to think that just believing something can work, like that placebo effect, can actually make you feel better.
Yeah, the mind is powerful.
It really is. And it makes you realize that there's so much we still don't understand about how the mind and body connect. Okay, so as we wrap up this deep dive, I keep thinking back to how popular reflexology is around the world. Even though the science isn't really there,
Yeah,
it makes you wonder what else is going on
it does.
besides those mechanisms they talk about.
It's like maybe people are looking for something more holistic.
Holistic.
It's something that addresses like the whole person.
The mental, the emotional, not just the physical.
Right.
And, you know, maybe it's also about that human touch, like having someone focus on you, care for you,
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it.
especially in today's world, where everything is so fast-paced and impersonal.
Yeah, we're all so busy and stressed.
Exactly. So maybe reflexology is a way to slow down, reconnect with ourselves.
Maybe it's a reminder to just be present in our bodies.
I like that. It makes me want to learn more about these cultures where reflexology is so popular.
Me too.
Like, what can we learn from their traditions, even if it doesn't totally line up with science?
I think there's a lot of wisdom there. It's a good reminder that there are different ways of knowing and understanding.
That's so true. Well, I think that about wraps it up for our reflexology duck dive.
We covered a lot of ground,
We did. I hope you learned some new things today.
and I hope you feel a little more confident in making your own decisions about reflexology.
Like we always say, keep asking questions. Be curious. Do your research.
And remember, your health journey is your own.
That's right.
So trust your gut, listen to your body.
Thanks for joining us, everyone,
And we'll see you next time.
for another deep dive.